Test, test. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, guys? Is it okay? Is there no reverb? Is it working? No audio still? Still no audio. Is there no audio, everyone? Hello? Can you hear me? Hold on. Hello? Now can you hear me? Now can you hear me? Are we good? I apologize for that. Sorry about that. I guess I was muted the whole time. My goodness, a little bit rusty here. That is, what are you going to do? A little bit rusty, but all right. I guess I'll run that back again. I apologize if everyone didn't hear me. But anyway, really excited to talk about this one. So excited that I accidentally muted myself. But yeah, like I said, can't wait to talk about Breaking Bad. I never get sick of watching and talking about this show. Unbelievable premiere of season 2. Like I said, after watching this for about the 99th time, it still never gets old. I still love rewatching so many of the unbelievable scenes that take place in this episode. Like I said, there's always different little themes and symbolism that I never got the first couple of times that I watched this episode. And yeah, there's so much here. Just an unbelievable episode through and through of Breaking Bad here. And like I said, I never get tired about talking about this show. It's been a little while, and I'm ready to get right into it. So again, thank you everyone for telling me about the fact that there is no audio. I hope the audio works now. If there's any other issues, definitely let me know. At Charlie Hennings. Yeah, I had a great Thanksgiving for sure. I hope everyone in the United States had a good one as well. What is up, Kate Valentine? What is up, at Justin Cruz? Thisby, how's it going? Ben, what is up? Stone Yoda, how's it going? Chris Cineros. So yeah, let's get into this one right here without further delay. So yeah, again, I sound like a broken record here, and I'm going to repeat myself again and again, but that Peter Gould quote of, after watching the ending of Better Call Saul, you'll see Breaking Bad in an entirely new light. I mean, who can't help but get some serious Gene Takovic vibes when we see the black and white theme here in the cold opening scene of this episode? Really, again, it's straight sort of reference to Better Call Saul. Of course, the fact that this show was created before Better Call Saul, but real Better Call Saul vibes here in this opening scene, absolutely. I mean, just to sort of jump a little bit ahead here, the pink bear at the end of this scene here, of course, the various black and white montage scenes taking place over the course of this episode, over the course of this season, excuse me, sort of eventually setting up the grand finale that we all knows happens at the end of the season 2 finale of Breaking Bad. But yeah, real vibes here of Better Call Saul, and you even wonder, and I bet the creators have talked about it somewhere, about the sort of parallels and references of this cold opening scene of the black and white being the entirety of the scene, with the exclusion of this pink bear, definitely giving me vibes to that final scene of Better Call Saul when Jimmy and Kim, spoiler alert, are smoking that cigarette in prison, and the only color is coming off of the light of the cigarette. Of course, the pink bear being much bigger here than the cigarette for sure, but I never thought about the at Stone Yoda. Yeah, again, this is actually the very first time that I rewatched this cold opening scene, this episode, since I saw Better Call Saul. So it's true for me. This is the very first time I rewatched the season 2 premiere since I saw the finale of season 6 of Better Call Saul. So yeah, absolutely amazing show for sure. And again, so many different possibilities that I could talk about here in this cold opening scene. Of course, we know, we see the black and white shots here of Walter White's house. We don't really know what's going on. The camera then pans to this floating eyeball in the pool. Gets sucked into the pool drain. And then, of course, the camera then pans to this charred pink teddy bear, thus ending the cold opening scene here in this episode. And again, like I said, we've all seen the entirety of Breaking Bad, so we know what this eventually builds to. But of course, I was, of course, wondering what was going on here the very first time when I watched this episode for sure. And again, there's two real themes here that are present in this episode here. And of course, it's the pink bear and the eyeball. And of course, I kind of a spoiler alert here, but I really feel like we can't really talk about sort of these two objects without sort of revealing the conclusion of the season 2 finale, where we see the sort of Wayfair plane crash and we see the pink teddy bear fall from the sky into Walter White's swimming pool. And again, to first start with the pink bear, in respect to the sort of symbolism of it all, we all know that pink is a real color of innocence here in Breaking Bad. And in the sort of big picture grand scheme of things here, again, as Vince Gilligan said, it's really up to the interpretation of the audience here when really putting together this sort of piece of artwork that was created by the creators, and how he has talked about this in the past, how the sort of art is what is first in present, and the meaning and true symbolism of it comes much later, potentially from the fans. He has even talked about how certain literary and artistic aspects of this television show truly didn't have sort of written in definitive critical meanings behind them, and a lot of the meaning really comes from the fans afterwards. It's sort of up to the interpretation of the fans. And a little bit of a tangent here, but I don't know if anyone here is a Nirvana fan, but there's actually a great sort of interview out there with Kurt Cobain and the rest of Nirvana, Dave Grohl, and oh my God, I'm Chris Novoselic. Then almost slipped my mind. But they're sort of being asked about, Smells Like Teen Spirit, the song, and the interviewers asking these sort of very in-depth, sort of extremely literary, complex meaning questions behind the lyrics of the song. And Kurt Cobain's response was pretty much, whatever, man. It's your crossword puzzle. Sort of, again, does every sort of artist have a distinguished specific meaning behind every sort of piece of art? I wouldn't think so. It's kind of, I don't know if every sort of artist intends something to be a certain sort of meaning or thematic symbolism of something. And again, it's up to the interpretation of the person taking in the art to ascribe said meaning. At the same time, I also sort of get major Scrody McBoogerball vibes for these South Park fans out there. But yeah, the pink bear is definitely in the background of a lot of sort of different snippets at Stone Yoda. I think it's in the background of the Fallacies music video with Jesse Pinkman as well. But again, in respect to the pink bear, with pink sort of being the color of innocence, my interpretation of all of this, at least right here in the moment right now, is sort of the sort of symbolism of the long, sort of far-reaching consequences of unintended consequences of Walter White's actions, and sort of how innocent people, such as, the child who owned this pink teddy bear, being affected by the consequences of Walter White's actions. In the most broadest sense of the term, that's sort of my interpretation of the pink bear here. Of course, I know a lot of people have talked about the sort of, maybe unintended at the time foreshadowing of the death of Gus Fring, where we see the sort of half-charred face, which is very sort of in the same vein and akin to the death of Gustavo Fring, spoiler alert, in the season 4 finale of Breaking Bad. So yeah, that's sort of my sort of interpretation of the pink bear here, with pink, of course, being, meaning innocence, and sort of the color of someone being innocent. Even the sort of, I've talked about this in the past, the name Jesse Pinkman, where despite Jesse Pinkman having his flaws, and yes, he has a lot of flaws, he has a good heart deep down. He is this sort of innocent person, this pink man, very intentional by the creators for sure. Again, whether or not you agree with that interpretation, that is truly up to you. And yeah, again, I don't want to sort of, we all know what happens here in respect to this pink bear. And also, before I get into the other sort of critical piece of art here that's placed into this scene of the floating eyeball, I definitely, if I'm not mistaken as well, I know a lot of people were kind of taken aback and almost like scratching their head in respect to the ending of this season, where this sort of huge build that happens over the course of this season with the sort of dead bodies that are in the driveway of Walter White, and all of the various sort of I guess forensic cleanup after the fact, where we see the glasses in the evidence bag, and how it ended up building towards just a very sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say erroneous, that's probably not the right word, but again, the sort of plane crash payoff in all of this, I know a lot of people were kind of questioning at the time the ending that was written in here by the creators, but if I'm not mistaken, I think that they were setting up the show to have potentially a much bigger sort of finale ending, a more broad-reaching ending that involved maybe Walter White and something much more hands-on with Walter White as opposed to unintended consequences, because they weren't even sure if Breaking Bad would be extended beyond season 2, if I'm not mistaken, because of course it was not this sort of critical out of the gate mainstream acclaimed show by any stretch of the imagination, and they definitely what they definitely were planning for a potential finale here in season 2 of Breaking Bad, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so pretty cool scene here for sure at Thebes. Exactly, the Pink Bears to show the children died due to Walter White's cause and effect. Yeah, pretty much the unintended consequences of Walt's actions. I'm pretty sure that was sort of the most broad-reaching sort of meaning behind this shot right here. And of course, another great shot, if I can find it, is the floating eyeball here in Walter White's pool as well. And to tell you the truth, even up to this, like even up until very recently, at Charlie Hennings thought it was Holly's bear when the forensics teams was at Walter White's house. Holly wasn't born yet when this as of the were you talking about when you saw it the very first time in season 2 of Breaking Bad, the premiere? Because Holly didn't exist yet. And also we see the bear fall from the sky at the very end of the season 2 finale, if I'm not mistaken. We see it fall from the sky and crash into Walter White's pool, and that's how it got there at Charlie Hennings. At the Pattern Slice 9900, what is up, Anton? Can't believe it's almost been 5 months since Better Call Saul ended. Absolutely, man. Time flies, man. Time flies when you're having fun or just working really hard, I guess. So yeah, at the Pattern Slice 9900, what is up? At X8 Abood, what do you think the I means? Aha. Great question there, and that perfectly takes me into the next part of this cold opening scene analysis here at X8 Abood. So yeah, for the longest time, I wasn't really sure what the meaning was behind this eye, and again, I've definitely even heard Vince Gilligan talk about it, how there was no direct intended meaning when this scene was written in. And if you sort of listen to what Vince Gilligan's interpretation of this is, it definitely makes a lot of sense to me. The sort of symbolic nature of the sort of eye of the universe, if you will, or the sort of eye of morality that's forever judging and watching over Walter White. I think that is what is likely the interpretation of this floating eyeball here in this scene. Because again, to really sort of break down these sort of two symbolic objects that are floating in Walter White's pool, we really have to sort of extrapolate out to what else was displayed to us over the course of Breaking Bad. And of course, we know that following the plane crash in the season 3 premiere of a Breaking Bad, when Walter White then sets his money on fire and of course dumps it in the pool after realizing he's made this colossal mistake. I can't burn this money, it has to be for something. When he's cleaning all of the money out of his pool, he finds the eyeball in the pool drain during the season 3 episode 1 premiere, and of course he takes it with him. He hangs on to it. He's when he breaks into Skylar's house in the very next episode, Caballo Sin Nombre, it's on top of his shirts in his suitcase after he breaks into his own house, and the cousins come in to attempt to avenge the death of Tuco. Really getting far ahead of ourselves here. And of course we see, I believe it was Leonel who held the eyeball and then looked at it and just kind of threw it back in the suitcase. And of course, the very last time we see this eyeball is when Skylar breaks into Walter White's condo in season 4 of Breaking Bad, in the episode entitled Box Cutter, when she's going through his belongings and she sees it in the drawer. And that's apparently the very last time that we see this eyeball. But yeah, again, it's kind of a shame. I kind of hope that I guess in retrospect, I didn't really think about it during season 5, because it never really came up over the course of season 4. And we never saw it again after the season 4 episode 1 premiere. But yeah, you wonder what happened to this eyeball. You would imagine that it might have just been in Walter White's condo the whole time when the police seized all of his assets after the sort of jig was up and the Heisenberg persona was discovered by the police. But yeah, I kind of like the sort of symbolic interpretation here of the sort of eye of the universe, the eye of God, the eye of morality, sort of looking over Walter White and sort of, always sort of, shining a light on Walter White and all of his actions, sort of juxtaposed and compounded with the fact that these sort of actions, which he mentally justifies as being net positives to, help his family and to provide for his family after being dealt this shit hand of being diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. At the same time, a lot of sort of innocent people are affected by Walter White's actions here in this episode. And I guess that's sort of what they're alluding to, the sort of, you know, the sort of eye of morality always following around Walter White. That sort of makes the most sense to me. And to tell you the truth, up until now, I never really thought too much about it, to tell you the truth. I always sort of wondered what the sort of hidden meaning behind this eyeball was. But yeah, with the benefit of hindsight, that's kind of the sort of interpretations that I'm sitting on as we head here into the premiere of season one. Excuse me, the episode one of season two of Breaking Bad. And yeah, again, like Kurt Cobain says, at the end of the day, you know, it's your crossword puzzle. Whatever sort of meaning you as an audience member want to subscribe to the pink bear and to the eyeball, it's definitely up to your interpretation, because unless a sort of distinct outward meaning is described to us, again, it's really up to your interpretation. So at the Bees, I'm surprised the eye wasn't like the Better Call Saul cork. Oh, the stopper for the Zafiro Añejo. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We don't really see it again after the season 4 premiere. It doesn't come up at all in season 5 of Breaking Bad. At Kate Valentine, thank you so much for the $20 super chat. Really appreciate the support. The Eye of Morality, superb analysis. Yeah, that definitely makes the most sense to me at Kate Valentine. And again, thank you so much for your continued support of this channel. It really does mean a lot. I really do appreciate it. You know, I really appreciate the support. You know, any way anyone supports this channel, it really means a lot to me. The support is, you know, like I said, much appreciated. And yeah, the Eye of Morality, that seems to make the most sense to me. And as Thabibs was saying, I really wish, in hindsight, again, in hindsight, it does seem like this very sort of powerful symbolic object that was placed here in the sort of premiere of season 2 of Breaking Bad, and it carries on to season 3 and season 4, but then it very abruptly sort of ends in season 4. And again, maybe there's sort of additional symbolism of all of that, where, you know, when he does, but then again, I'm not so sure completely about that in respect to, you know, his relationship with Gus Fring following the death of Gail Bedecker, and what sort of the meaning is after that. But yeah, we do not see it after the season 4 premiere, when Skyler looks at it in her drawer in Walter White's condo when she's wondering where he is because he doesn't come home that night, and she, under false pretenses, sort of gets into his condo, even though it's against the law because her name is not on the deed. She sort of says, you know, she has this crying baby here with Holly. But yeah, it is a sort of shame. And who knows, maybe I can dream, can I, if we ever see any sort of continuation of Breaking Bad in the future. You know, maybe this eyeball will somehow come into the story somehow. Who knows? But yeah, we will see. And Kate Valentine, thank you again so much for the support. I really appreciate it. At Matt D, great take, Anton. Again, too kind. But yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense to me. At the Recovery 716, I wasn't expecting the plane crash to be the reason for the eyeball. LOL. Yeah, absolutely. I talked about that a little bit earlier, about how they might have been writing a sort of much broader story at the Recovery 716, a sort of more series finale instead of season finale. But when the show got extended for another season, they sort of had to wrap up this sort of storyline, if I'm not mistaken. But don't quote me on that completely. I'm not 100% well versed on the production of season 2 of Breaking Bad. I wasn't in the writer's room, unfortunately. So at Charlie Hennings, that is another great interpretation. And like I said, that's a great interpretation as well. The sort of the eye of the cartel zeroing in on Walter White. That's another sort of great analysis of this eyeball as well, and could be a sort of additional analysis that conjuncts with the sort of eye of the universe, eye of morality as well. Because as we know later in this episode, when Hank Schrader is shown the Southwestern Anilin robbery tape by Steve Gomez, he makes that sort of very what's the word I'm looking for here? Very profound, sort of, and very true piece of foreshadowing when he says, you know, with a score that big, they're gonna step on a lot of toes. They better hope that it's us that catches up with them. They better hope that it's us that catches up with them before those boys from Juarez. So yeah, that's another great sort of analysis as well in respect to the eye of the cartel being another sort of thematic possibility here with this eyeball. But yeah, like I said, it was never revealed to us. As Vince Gilligan said himself, it's up to the interpretation of the audience. And a lot of the times, as he said himself, the meaning comes afterwards. At Stone Yoda, Illuminati confirmed. There we go, that too. Exactly. But yeah, the meaning comes afterwards, and it's up to the interpretation of the audience. So, as was that infamous scene that I talked about in the past in respect to the hummingbird flying into the camera during the season 2 premiere of Better Call Saul. But anyway, yeah, great opening scene here. Don't want to, again, I kind of sort of skipped all the way ahead to basically the end of this series. But yeah, it's hard to talk about these sort of two thematic elements without sort of skipping ahead a little bit. But I don't want to sort of get too far ahead of myself here because the additional black and white scenes that are projected to us take place over the course of season 2 of Breaking Bad. So yeah, so to continue here, we then see Act 1, Scene 1, a direct continuation, actually a flashback to a scene that we saw at the end of Season 1 of Breaking Bad, when Walter White delivers Tuco the 4.5 pounds of the P2P methamphetamine. Of course, Tuco's saying, what is this S? This is blue. Walt, of course, saying, we use a different chemical process, but it's every bit as pure. Jesse's saying, maybe blue, but it's the bomb. Tuco's saying, tight, yeah. Blue, yellow, pink, whatever it is, keep bringing it to me. We're going to make a lot of money together. And of course, No-Dose makes this very sort of mundane, innocuous comment of just remember who you're working for. This, of course, sets Tuco off. Tuco is an extremely irrational, emotional person, especially when he's using methamphetamine. It's just exponentially compounded that he's just unbelievably angry and aggressive and affronted by this comment by No-Dose. And again, the main premise of this but the main premise of this opening scene here of Act 1 of Breaking Bad is, of course, the fact that Walter White and Jesse Pinkman are truly understanding the unintended consequences, if you will, of getting involved with a high-level distributor as Tuco Salamanca is. They see this sort of homicidal maniac, to quote Walter White, beat the ever-living crap out of his own associates for Jesse Pinkman for nothing, for just a little innocuous comment. So, as Jesse will say later in this episode, if he beats a man to death for nothing, we are absolutely potentially next on the chopping block here. Especially being loose ends and witnesses to this murder of No-Dose. But again, yeah, if I can try to find this scene was also displayed to us at the end of Season 1 of Breaking Bad. But again, Walter White and Jesse Pinkman really exemplifying to us just how over the heads of these two characters their decisions currently are, how deep they are in respect to being involved with the cartel. And it's so true what Nacho Vargas said to Saul Goodman: when you're in, you're in. And at this moment in time, they are in the game, whether they know it or not. And they don't know it. They truly, and we as the audience don't know it. We don't know just how deep Tuco Salamanca's cartel connections run at this point in time in Season 2 of Breaking Bad. But yeah, definitely the sort of premise here in this scene when this homicidal maniac beats the crap out of his own associates. Walt and Jesse are just flabbergasted, incredibly fearful for their own lives following seeing this. And then we see them regroup, of course, in Jesse's car, where we sort of see the sort of gears turning here for Walter Hartwell White. Yeah, I'm Matt D. Yeah. The foresight. It's definitely fun to watch these with foresight for sure. You can really see where the story is going completely when you already have the entire sort of knowledge. Absolutely, it's definitely kind of fun to watch it from this perspective as well. But of course, in the scene here, we then sort of see the reason behind why Walter White is doing all of this, where essentially he goes over the numbers in his head of how much money he will need to provide for his family following his death. And we have to remember, at this point in the timeline of Breaking Bad, Walter White has been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, where it's likely that he's going to die in probably a little bit over a year. Of course, with the grand irony being, even with the chemotherapy, because of the consequences of his own actions over the course of this series, he ends up dying in 2 years anyway. Kind of ironic in the sense that if he had done nothing, the cancer likely would have killed him in that amount of time as well. But Walter White sort of goes over, the amount of money that he needs in order to provide for his family once he's passed on, and he comes up with the number $737,000. That is what he needs, sort of rationalizing how he and Jesse get out of this unbelievable predicament that they find themselves in, where he says, 11 and a half, 12 drug deals. That's all it will sort of take. That's all we need to do. Just 12 more weeks, just 3 months of this, always in a public place. We'll be okay, despite the fact that Tuco is a crazy man who will likely, kill us at the first chance he gets. And of course, we have to remember that the money is the entire premise of all of this. Where even when, Walter Jr. is talking to Walt, when Walt runs off to New Hampshire and sort of, tries to give him money via sending it to Lewis's house, and Walter Jr. basically saying, just get out of our lives, just die already. Walt, of course, saying this can't all be for nothing. This has to be for something. And we have to remember that the reason behind all of Walter White's actions here is money, is acquiring money for his family. And it's actually quite interesting if you watch this season of a Breaking Bad, where over the course of the season, while they always sort of make money here, right now they have about $70,000 each. As we know from Jesse Pinkman's $70K getting seized by Hank Schrader in the next 2 episodes when he's being interrogated at the DEA headquarters. Over the course of this season, we learn that, well, how can I phrase this? It's written into the story that once Walt essentially gets this amount of money, he's done. And again, I'm kind of stumbling over my words here. I'm trying to sort of reframe this, but yeah, it's kind of, again, extrapolating out to even the episode entitled "Buyout" in season 5 of Breaking Bad. Had Walter White, somehow, $1 million had fallen out of the sky at this moment in time right now, he probably would have quit. As sort of Jesse Pinkman said to him, like, I remember when you said all you need is $737,000, and you said that's all I need, and now you're having the opportunity to have $5 million, and you're saying no, you can have everything you want, you can retire, you can be done, you can spend time with your family. This is more than 5 times the amount of money that you said you needed in my car following our first drug deal with Tuco, second drug deal with Tuco. But of course, the whole premise of this is, had Walter, and I really think that's sort of the reason why every single time, it's true, that this is kind of the point I'm trying to make here, where every single time that Walt and Jesse acquire money here over the course of this season, it has to be written in by the creators that something has to happen where the constant steady stream of illegal revenue is taken away. Because if it sort of stays the way it is within the story, then there's really no need for the story to progress 2, 3, 4, 5 more seasons. Because it is really true. Had Walter White acquired that $1 million, he may have stopped right here, then and there and then. The same way where finally when they get their own operation up and running and they're making lots of money with Skinny Pete and Combo and Badger, had Badger not gotten arrested and they didn't have to basically give up all of their money after that again, after, following the Bit by Dead Bee episode where Walter White is basically saying, do you know how much I have left after my first round of chemotherapy and financing the world's most expensive alibi? 0. So every single time that Walter White acquires money over the course of the season, it has to be sort of taken away in regards to the sort of premise of the storytelling of Breaking Bad. Because it is true what Jesse Pinkman said. Had Walter White gotten all of that money right away, right now, he would have quit. He absolutely would have quit. But of course, as this sort of process went on, days turned into weeks, turned into months, all the sort of other, I guess, internal resentments and sort of chips on his shoulder had sort of come out of Walter White, where it's true, I'm in the empire business. It's no longer about providing for my family once I expire. And the, sort of in the grand scheme of things, like he said to Skyler in Felina, it was always because of that. It was for me. I was alive. I was good at it. And whether Walter White, again, I think that's sort of the premise here, where whether Walter White knows it or not, even in this moment right here, it's not really about providing money for his family. That's sort of just the excuse, if you will. All of the sort of things that Walter White is going through right now, in my humble opinion, is, because his whole life, he had basically done nothing. He had taken no risk. He feels like he got a sort of bad hand dealt to him. He never really had any control in his life, and he finally sort of wants to be the man here. He wants to build this sort of empire where, even though he's not saying it right now, subconsciously in the back of his head, he's still in the empire business right now, despite the fact he doesn't say it like he does later down the road in season 5 of Breaking Bad. So that's sort of my interpretation of this unbelievable opening scene right here. At Debza Komos, what is up as well? Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, at Stone Yoda, I hope that answered your question there. So at Sam Fisher, what is up? Watching Better Call Saul with my roommate on season 5. He had no idea about poor Howard. That reaction is gonna be priceless. Oh wow. Okay, so you have, yeah. If he hasn't seen that yet, yeah. Ooh, yeah. To this day, that one still was a shocking at Sam Fisher. That one literally took me days to get over. Absolutely. I mean, it wasn't like I was incapacitated or nothing, but that scene was definitely, even when I was sort of like removed from that sort of television show, the sort of thoughts were sort of creeping into my head. The sort of, replaying of that scene over and over and over again in my head. It was so vivid and just so powerful. To this day, one of the best scenes of this entire universe by far. Yeah, Stone Yoda. That's sort of the sort of $80 million question, if you will, about, was it really always about? It was really always about him. Probably it wasn't. The family was sort of, a sort of the sort of excuse, if you will, to sort of act out in this manner. But again, at the end of the day, it's really seems like it was all about him. It was all about, him wanting to sort of go out on that sort of adventure that he never did in his entire life. So yeah, it's Sam Fisher. That was a tough scene. I agree completely. But yeah, moving on here, Walt sort of, trying to, use his sort of mental processes to say how we're going to get out of the scene. Then, of course, very, powerful scene here, continuation where Tuco drives back, very erratically and throws Nodos out of the car and he's sort of convulsing here and about to die. And he basically says, you're smart, fix something and, fix it. And Walter White basically saying, are you crazy? I can't do anything. He needs a hospital. He needs an ambulance. Tuco, high on meth right now, not thinking rationally at all, telling him to basically do CPR here to breathe into his mouth. Walt saying, they don't teach that anymore. That's not going to do anything. He doesn't have a pulse. Nodos then quickly dies after this. Tuco telling Jesse to breathe into his mouth as well, but Walt's saying, he's dead. Don't even bother. Of course, following Nodos's death, we then see this additional anger come out of Tuco, where he begins to kick him violently again and again and again, sort of adding, injury to the insult here, or insult to the injury, if you will, of just kicking a man while he's down, literally, just further ingraining the sort of homicidal lunatic sort of persona that is Tuco Salamanca here, which is witnessed by Walter White and Jesse Pinkman. Tuco then, of course, saying get rid of him. His brother-in-law, Gonzo, basically not wanting to do this, saying it's not very Christian. We can't do him like this. Again, this sort of dialogue right here definitely foreshadowing for what eventually happens to Gonzo at the end of this episode, where he places his body very unceremoniously underneath this pile of cars. We even see that they begin to shift. Some crucial foreshadowing with the benefit of hindsight. We then see Tuco, smoking a cigarette, like he's, having a walk in the park here, like nothing's wrong. Walt and Jesse using this as an opportunity to turn around and leave. Tuco, of course, saying, what's the hurry? Walt saying, I just think we're done here. Of course, at the same time, Tuco then walks up to these two characters here and sort of, with his real sort of dead intimidation stare, his almost sort of lie detector, if you will, and that great sort of scene in the episode entitled "Gloves Off," where Nacho Varga, talks about Tuco's interactions with Dog Paulson, who again is a reference to Breaking Bad. This sort of lie detector test, really, I got some real Better Call Saul lie detector test vibes here for when he was putting his lie detector on Crazy 8, where even Jesse Pinkman will say when he and Walt are conversing in his house, Tuco is thinking, they are loose ends, they are witnesses, they cook good meth, but can I trust them? And so, yeah, it's really unbelievable how, after seeing Better Call Saul and rewatching Breaking Bad again, how the story just comes together completely and how all the additional information that we have from Better Call Saul now permeates and affects the story of a Breaking Bad. And so the dialogue of Tuco and his lie detector test that he tells Mike Ehrmantraut in season 2 of Better Call Saul in the episode entitled Gloves Off now definitely sort of affects this scene here with Tuco Salamanca when he says you're done to Jesse and Walt here in the scene. At Sam Fisher, absolutely. Absolutely. With the fact that, again, jumping ahead of ourselves here, but in the next episode, when Tuco tells Walt and Jesse that the DEA picked up their entire crew except for Gonzo, that makes him think that Gonzo was a DEA informant when in reality Gonzo had already, passed away. And that's why the DEA didn't already pick him up, and that's why he didn't hear about it. So, yeah, great scene here for sure. This sort of cold opening, this sort of first scene here of Act 1. And then we get to the sort of next scene here, which is it's not the most pleasant scene to watch if I'm the most honest here, with the benefit of hindsight. This scene here when sort of Skylar is, you know, I guess this is the sort of afternoon because Walter Jr. is about to come home from school, and we see her sort of putting this, I don't know, green mask. I'm not too well versed in skincare products, but this sort of green mask that is apparently good for your skin on her face. She's she's very pregnant here. She's gonna give birth later in the season, just trying to, relax and fully prepare herself to eventually give birth. In the future, of course, at the same time, she hears Walter White come in, but he doesn't say anything. He's literally sort of zoning out here, almost white noise in his head. He appears to be, Walt in shock, absolutely, almost a sort of type of shock after that incident with Tuco Salamanca. He's definitely watching the news here for sure, probably a little bit paranoid that maybe, something that happened in the junkyard was maybe picked up on the local news. Totally zoning out what Skylar is saying to him. Eventually, she has to approach him and tap him on the shoulder, and that's what makes him turn around. Because we know when we get the scene right here, I can't put the audio, but it's literally just white noise happening in Walter White's head. He's not even listening to what Skylar is saying. She, of course, says new hat. She said, "When did you come in?" Walt not really sort of, engaging in really any conversation, just sort of saying, yes, everything's fine, etc., etc. Then following, Skylar basically making some very mundane conversation about, would you like some, chicken to eat here? We then see Walter White approach her and start crying. And then we see a sort of very, again, I don't know, it's kind of funny. I've seen actually certain websites write about how this scene is, in hindsight, very problematic, if you will. And again, I don't know if I really want to go down that road in respect to this scene here. Heating up the chicken from Albertsons. That is absolutely right, Justin Cruz. But again, we see Walter White here, want to sort of engage in sexual intercourse with his wife, Skylar, right here in the kitchen, very, abruptly and a little bit unceremoniously. And again, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this is sort of a great sort of metaphor for the sort of gray area by which we, interpret consent in this world in respect to sexual interactions and stuff like that. But of course, again, we see Skylar initially is sort of into it here and laughing and very playful, but when Walter White, again, gets very sort of aggressive and abrupt, she tells him to take his time and then eventually to stop. And of course, when she says to stop, Walter White does stop and then leaves and sort of goes and sits out by the pool. But yeah, again, at Stu Lerner, that's a great sort of point. We have to remember the sort of context of this scene. And again, there's a great sort of shot here when Walter White is literally crying. He's like crying on Skylar's shoulder. He begins to sob and cry on Walter White's shoulder. And again, we have to sort of remember, Skylar doesn't know everything that's going on here with Walter White. And in her interpretation, again, this is definitely a very sort of logical, sort of almost emotional reaction by her husband, Walter White, where he just got diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. He's facing his own immediate mortality. It's a very sort of natural, sort of almost like reaction and grieving process by, Walter White. And even as he talked about in season 1, as she and Walt talked about in season 1 of Breaking Bad, when they were visiting Dr. Del Cavoli, kind of saying that he's becoming more frisky or something to that effect. And yeah, it's sort of, his sort of libido is a side effect of his cancer or something to that effect. So yeah, that's sort of my interpretation here of that scene. And again, I've seen some people like really sort of not like this scene. I've seen some people write about how the scene, again, like I said, is, in air quotes, problematic or whatever. But, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, I feel like, again, it's that very sort of gray area by which we draw consent. And I really don't feel like it's, I feel like at the end of the day, Walter White, when Skylar said stop, he immediately stopped and went into, sit by the pool. And Skylar even says to him, I can't imagine what you're going through. I know this is not fair, but you can't take this out on me. Um, and of course, or even earlier saying that Walter Jr. is coming home soon. And of course, again, Skylar very much alluding to the fact that he was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer at age 50. We then, of course, see Walter Jr. look at the sort of green spot on the refrigerator by which his mom sort of hit her face on the refrigerator when she was, with Walt a little bit earlier. But in the grand scheme of things, I really feel like all of these, characters kind of just, at the end of the day, sort of let this go. Don't make this into sort of a big deal and just sort of move on with their lives. Walter Jr. probably thinks it's better to sort of keep certain things left unsaid. And, Skylar probably just chalks up Walt's actions to the terminal lung cancer diagnosis. Of course, over the course of this episode, he'll begin to act more and more distant and erratic to Skylar. But at the end of the day, all these characters sort of just move on from this scene. And, again, I feel like, as will I here in this scene. Again, it's not the most pleasant scene to watch, if you will. But again, a lot of sort of themes and symbolism absolutely present here. In this scene with Walt and Skylar following him coming home from the botched drug deal, if you will, with Tuco Salamanca. Then following this great scene here, if I'm not mistaken, our very first ever display of the doghouse in Breaking Bad, a staple location in the plot of Better Call Saul as well. We see Jesse Pinkman here pretending to just eat at this restaurant, of course, all under the guise of buying a handgun. Unbelievable scene here, of course, where, Jesse buying a gun, likely maybe even for the first time in his life, as a result of his fear of what Tuco may do to him. And these fears are absolutely confirmed following the first scene in Act 2, following the conclusion of Act 1 here in this episode. But yeah, so more or less at Justin Cruz, Jesse purchases an illegal firearm to kill Tuco. Absolutely. That's absolutely what that scene was right there. And it's kind of funny. I definitely heard the creators talking about it and about how like they even were very specific about the type of gun that Jesse would buy. It wouldn't be the sort of nicest gun. It would be kind of a sort of low-end gun that a person would buy for the very first time. So kind of a very cool little detail that was presented here in this scene. But yeah, following this, a direct continuation, we then see Act 2 here in this episode with Walt and Jesse sort of, Jesse sort of saying to Walt, "We are dead, man, we are dead." Sort of, basically talking about what I talked a little bit earlier about how Tuco is a homicidal lunatic. Did you not see him beat a man to death for absolutely nothing? We are witnesses, we are loose ends. Tuco basically saying they could meth, but can I trust them? Walter White, of course, saying this is all conjecture. Then Jesse going on further to tell him that, all right, I have actual evidence of this. Last night my phone rang 5 times, dead air. No pickup every single time. And then I saw his black caddy cruising my neighborhood. He's putting out feelers. What happens when, he decides that we are loose ends and we have to be killed? And of course, again, I sort of butchered the dialogue there, but that's pretty much what Jesse was alluding to here. We are witnesses, we are loose ends. Tuco is saying they cook good meth, but can I trust them? What happens when the answer is no? We then see Jesse pick up the handgun and place it on the table. An unbelievable scene here through and through. And again, even after when I was watching season 5 of Breaking Bad, I always thought back to this scene where when Walt sees this handgun and is saying, absolutely not, no, we are not going down that road. We are not going down that road. Jesse Pinkman saying it's either him or us. And again, just in hindsight, I would always think back to this scene, especially during the prison killing montage scene in the episode entitled Gliding Overall, where, Walter White doesn't even think twice about killing, 11 witnesses to save himself. Where, here with Tuco Salamanca, he does not want to go down that road. He is not developed as a character enough to basically be a cold-blooded killer who will kill in order to serve his own means. He has already killed 2 people here, but both of them can sort of be argued in self-defense. As is the the killing of Tuco Salamanca in the next episode as well. Of course, it's much more gray and much more nebulous, and that's sort of the sort of character development that takes place over the course of Breaking Bad for Walter White in respect to when he finally is sort of able to become this cold-blooded killer who will kill as a prophylactic measure as opposed to, morally justifying it in his head that he's only really killing when he absolutely has to out of self-defense as, as Crazy 8 and Emilio were sort of interpreted to be. But, absolutely at Stone Yoda, quite the difference as well. Absolutely, when he kills the rival dealers, that is a great point that you raise at Stone Yoda. Absolutely, but so following Jesse basically saying, it's either him or us, Walter White in very Walter White fashion, then it sort of makes Jesse go over the sort of killing process step by step. From a logical, rational, intelligent point of view. And of course, when Jesse does this, he then realizes all of the bottlenecks and pitfalls in this sort of very emotionally irrational plan. And how if he just charges Tuco Salamanca with a gun, it's not going to work, and it's likely going to result in his own death as well. And Walt kind of saying, all right, we'll put a pin in that. It's not so easy. Jesse basically saying, yeah, well, you did it. And, Walt, of course, saying, yeah, I did. And again, it sort of gets in this whole real gray debate in respect to, the sort of eye of morality in respect to, cold-blooded murder, if you will, over the course of Breaking Bad. But yeah, unbelievable setup scene here for sure. I love these scenes with Walt and Jesse at Jesse's house. I've always loved them over the course of Breaking Bad. And a great sort of critical piece of foreshadowing for where this plot will go, over the course of this episode and the next. At Sam Fisher, why didn't Gus kill Tuco? Yeah, I made an entire video about that in the past. It's definitely a subject matter for a different video. But I've talked about that in the past for sure. I made an entire sort of video about that of sort of asking the question if Gus sort of played had a hand in the death of Tuco as a result of the dialogue of Better Call Saul. So definitely check that out if you want for sure. But yeah, definitely great scene here. And then following this, the next scene in Act 2 here. I love these sort of juxtaposition scenes where we see Walt and Jesse going over the back and forth of, the dynamics of the, Albuquerque criminal underworld and this horrible predicament they find themselves in. And this is immediately juxtaposed with a much more normal and middle-class sort of existence, a much more calm and tranquil and less violent and less sort of emotionally debilitating existence of Marie Schrader getting ready for work. Of course, this is a direct callback to the previous season where Skyler calls her out on her, what's the word I'm looking for, kleptomania. And, of course, her compulsive stealing. And, of course, Marie basically says, I don't know what you're talking about, despite the fact that Skyler knows that she's dead to rights guilty. And we then see Marie just trying to move on and go about everything like nothing is wrong, just trying to continue her relationship with her sister. Of course, we then learn later over the course of this episode that Skyler is ducking Marie and doesn't want anything to do with her until she apologizes for what she did in the previous season with the sort of horrible embarrassment that she suffered when she gifted her the stolen tiara that she shoplifted from the store Zachary's. We then see a sort of continuation of this scene when Hank finally confronts her on her kleptomaniacy, her being a kleptomaniac, and basically saying, she has her therapy for that, and, Marie even saying, I don't know what you're talking about, it's not today, it's a different day. Marie maybe even being a little bit in denial. I think that's kind of the premise of the scene of her mental illness, if you will. Great piece of foreshadowing here with the little kid driving the electric car in the cul-de-sac. Hank, of course, trying to keep his sort of, house in order as well. Sort of showing the sort of normal middle-class problems that he is suffering from in respect to the sort of dynamics of his wife and his sister-in-law. Great scene here, of course, when Marie drives over the kid's toy car and Hank sort of has to pay for it out of pocket here. Pretty great scene here where he begins to talk and says, it's, she's, I forget about it, just kind of pulls out his, his money clip here and he knows he has to pay for this car that Marie ran over. But yeah, sort of great piece of foreshadowing for where the story is going to go. And again, I really like this sort of juxtaposition of the sort of Albuquerque criminal underworld to the sort of more normal middle class existence of Hank Schrader. And of course, the grand sort of amazing irony in all of this is that Hank has no idea that these worlds are completely interconnected. I mean, we as the audience know this, but it's the crazy thing here for Hank Schrader is that he is going about his life, he's going about his existence, and has no idea that it is his brother-in-law that he is chasing. I mean, in the grand scheme of it, I mean, this is just an unbelievably well written story through and through here. I mean, I can just, the more I talk about it, the more I just realize how much I love this story so much and how I know, there are so many fans of the show and how I can literally watch this episode, 2, 3 dozen times and never get bored of it. But yeah, I really love this show so much. And at Sam Fisher, yeah, he has really nice shirts. I'm definitely getting some serious Charlie Sheen 2.5 Men vibes from this shirt. I'm kind of getting a bowling shirt here for sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't even see that at Sondio. Yeah. Definitely a 2.5 Men vibe for sure. But yeah, anyway, following this, we then see Hank going to work that morning following that sort of interaction with Marie. Again, we can sort of see him coming in looking very annoyed and frustrated by his internal family dynamic, where he even shoves a sort of inmate in lockup who's asking for his phone call. Um, we then see him sort of, getting right down to business. Steve Gomez telling the golf story that, of course, will be told again. Again, it's sort of a little bit of an Easter egg. I don't want to go off on a whole tangent here for sure about that. But, Hank sort of getting right to business here, saying, Gomi, what do you got for me? Chop chop. Gomez saying, all right, good morning to you too. I guess we're getting right to work here. And of course, we then see Hank Schrader for the first time take a look at the Southwest and Anilin tape robbery. Justin Cruz, why couldn't Walt get arrested and get the penalty instead of dying? And get the penalty? Like the death penalty? Why couldn't Walt get arrested? I mean, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. I have always wondered that, if Jack Walker didn't get involved, what would have happened? I mean, would he have just faced the music and, gotten arrested? I mean, because in the grand scheme of things, I guess, family was the number one priority for Walter White. And despite the fact he didn't want to go to prison, he wasn't going to kill Hank Schrader. He wasn't going to kill his brother-in-law to get out of prison. So, yeah, that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves here in respect to that. But, again, I don't even know. I mean, I guess he could have gotten the federal death penalty, I suppose, but I'm not even sure. I feel like if El Chapo didn't get the death penalty, I don't know if they would have given it to Walter White, if I'm being completely honest. So, yeah, that's sort of my just off-the-cuff interpretation of all of that. But yeah, as I talked a little bit earlier, we see the Southwest and Anilin robbery here. Pretty funny scene for sure, where we see that, again, like I talked about, the grand irony in all of this is that this is literally his brother-in-law that he is seeing in this tape right here. It is such a mind F for Hank Schrader. It must have been when he finally put the puzzle pieces together in season 5, part 2 of Breaking Bad, the episode entitled Blood Money. A great amount of at Sam Fisher, again, if he was charged federally, I know there's the federal death penalty. They have the federal death penalty. So if he was charged in federal court for all of his crimes, I guess he could have been. But I'm pretty sure El Chapo, like I said, I don't even think El Chapo got the death penalty. So I'm not sure if they're going to give it to Walter White. But that is neither here nor there. But anyway, yeah, great scene here where, like I said, Walter White is right under his nose the entire time. It's then revealed to us that they stole 30 gallons of methylamine P2P as a precursor because the pseudo is in short supply. So they make do with switching up the formula. The gears are sort of turning in Hank Schrader's head, where he's learning that, these guys have their street smarts, but, they have their book smarts, but they don't have street smarts because they're picking up this 30-gallon barrel that probably weighs, like 150 pounds or something to that effect, 250 pounds probably, around there, instead of rolling it. And yeah, in hindsight, that would have made a lot more sense. They could have just gotten behind it and pushed that barrel as opposed to trying to pick up this, multiple 100-pound barrel of methylamine. And again, to sort of, flash back to the sort of eye in the swimming pool, the sort of eye of the cartel, zoning in on Walter White. Hank Schrader says that sort of real sort of foreshadowing piece of dialogue where, a score this big, they better hope that it's the law that catches up to them instead of those boys from Juarez. Because, I mean, if, again, as, Jesse Pinkman will say, Colombian neckties and all of that, Hank Schrader is sort of alluding to the fact that, prison is the optimal choice compared to, what the cartel will do to you if you ever step on their toes. sort of again alluding to us what will happen in season 3 of Breaking Bad when the cousins were about to chop up Walter White with that axe to avenge the death of their cousin. So again, spoiler alert here, for sure. Anton and everyone I was saying could have got the death penalty. Yeah, I mean, federally, I think he could have. I think I tried to mention that a little bit earlier. They can impose it, but um, I don't know. I feel like again, it would have been a long process, and again, there's so many appeals processes, and it takes a lot, even for people who are on death row in state prison, it takes decades sometimes to execute people. So Walter White would have probably died of cancer before he ever got executed, as he even said to Hank Schrader, where I would never see the inside of a jail cell. I'm a dying man, you know. I have lung cancer. You know, they wouldn't have executed Walter White. It probably wouldn't have happened, just based on my very shallow understanding of the U.S. legal system. But anyway, the final scene here in Act 2, we then see Walter White coming home from work, and we see the sort of black caddy in Walter White's neighborhood. When it finds out where Walter White lives, it then very quickly turns around and drives away, thus ending Act 2. Walter White then realizing, all right, you know, I may have said I don't want to kill this man. I don't want to go down that road, but you know, he's forcing my hand here. He knows where I live. He's quasi-threatening my family. This is my red line in the sand. So be it. Tuco, this means war. I'm kind of extrapolating what Walter White is maybe thinking here. And yeah, we then see his sort of plan to manufacture ricin with Jesse Pinkman displayed to us in the next third act of this episode. That's such a great scene at Sam Fisher. That is such a great scene in Blood Money. You know, I'm a dying man. My hand to God. No, I'm a dying man who owns a car wash. My hand to God. That's all I am. What's the point? Oh my goodness, getting ahead of ourselves here, but great scene through and through. But yeah, following this, well, real quickly, as Stone Yoda, Vince Gill confirmed in the commentary for this episode, this was not Tuco or his henchmen surveilling Walter White's home. Walter White simply suffering from severe paranoia. Again, that's a great sort of point. I always thought it was Tuco, but yeah, it could have been paranoia, much akin to when Jesse thought that the missionaries coming to his home were, motorcycle gangsmen trying to, beat him up or something to that effect. So yeah, definitely up to the interpretation of the audience here. I actually never, that's a great point at Stone Yoda. I never even thought of that being Walter White's paranoia. That is a great point there for sure. I always thought it was sort of Tuco's man here. But yeah, it definitely could have been paranoia. And at the end of the day, it's never revealed to us, so I guess technically it could go either way. But that is a great point you raised. I actually never thought of it from that perspective. I appreciate you raising that perspective at Stone Yoda. Thank you so much for that. That is a great point for sure. But yeah, like I said, anyway, here, the first scene in Act 3, we then see that Walter White's, paranoia or justifiably so looming threat caused him to stay up all night because of a fear of Tuco maybe coming to his home. Skylar basically saying that you stay up all night. Of course, Walter White telling a half-truth lie here, basically saying, I had a touch of, I think, a stomach bug or something to that effect, and I was going to be going up and down. I didn't want to wake you. Of course, telling Skylar a lie here, and once Skylar sort of obliges here with this lie by Walter White, it's then revealed to us that he had been holding a knife this entire time, and he puts it back in the sort of, what do you call this, the sheath? Is that the right word? Displaying to us that he, was paranoid, or rightfully so, fearful for the life of himself and his family, and was staying up all night, looking out the window with a knife. Again, real flashbacks to Ozymandias, or sort of flash forwards, if you will, in hindsight to Ozymandias, the sort of POV shot of the knives here. And yeah, this is sort of a great scene here for sure. The sort of actual fear that Walter White suffers from here when he's worried about Tuco threatening to kill him. And it's kind of crazy. I remember, like, when I was sort of a little bit more young and foolish when the first time I was watching the show, again, I've even sort of heard this sort of described about, like, shows like gangster shows like Goodfellas, about how, it's a really cool to sort of see into this sort of very sort of clandestine, secretive, a world that most people are never ever going to be a part in. But of course, once the sort of show or movie is over, you can sort of step back from it and say, well, I'm glad I don't actually live in that world. And you kind of like romanticize, like, wow, like this is sort of a cool, amazing sort of adventure that Walter White is going on. He's so alive when he's doing what he's doing here. But at the end of the day, I mean, the amount of stress that a person like Walter White must have been under when he was doing all of this. I mean, just unable to sleep at night because he's fearful of his own life. I mean, that is no way to live life. I mean, like, no one wants to not be able to sleep soundly at night. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a tangent here. But yeah, I can only imagine the amount of stress that Walt and Jesse were going on, were under here in this scene when they were literally fearful that someone was going to sort of kill them. And I can imagine they probably weren't sleeping at all. Jesse maybe even using amphetamine here. Who knows? But at Stone Deodar, yeah, I talked about, like I said, for sure. It's hard not to jump ahead with the benefit of hindsight to all of the sort of various references that will be displayed to us over the course of this season for sure. But yeah, so following this, we then see that sort of same morning, Walt saying, how could Tuco know where I live? Jesse basically saying he's putting out, feelers, but then, of course, taking out the gun again, saying, of course, I kind of forgot to talk about this a little bit earlier, the sort of grand sort of, coup de grace where Walt basically saying, how can you suggest that we kill a man when you can't even open the gun? Because Jesse couldn't open the gun. He says, I finally figured out how to open it. I finally figured out how to open the gun. I say we get another one to like double our chances mathematically. Of course, Walt then saying, no, there's a better way. Jesse, of course, being just absolutely relieved, just saying, thank God you have something else. And definitely sort of Jesse loving having that ace up the sleeve of Walter White's sort of knowledge, if you will. But of course, we then see Walt take out the beans here, and Jesse saying, magic beans, what are we going to do? Plant a beanstalk and, plant them and escape. And of course, Walt then saying we're going to process them into ricin. Jesse's saying, again, it's still funny after like the 30th time I've heard this dialogue, but when Jesse says Stone Deodar rice and beans, that the sort of reaction of Walter White after he says that, again, I can try to find that scene here. But yeah, it's gonna be hard to sort of find that exact scene here without playing it. But the rice and beans, like I think I can sort of play it. If I got this. I mean, seriously, I've seen this scene like 40 times, and it's still funny. I mean, the sort of look the sort of look of disbelief. I cannot believe who I am dealing with here. This is my business partner. This is the man who I'm entrusting my life with. Essentially, this is my sort of combat in arms, Jesse Pinkman. When I say we're gonna process them, the rice and bean again. Still funny after all of this, but of course we then learn that ricin can be processed from castor beans. It's an extremely deadly poison that can be overlooked in an autopsy. Walter White then goes on to tell him the sort of anecdote of the Soviet KGB operative using ricin injected from the head of an umbrella into the sort of leg of a Bulgarian journalist, if my memory serves me correctly. And basically saying, like, we're talking more than the size of the head of the pin. And, eventually, again, the very lethal, odorless, tasteless, I don't know if it's tasteless, but a very lethal poison that's easy to overlook in autopsies. We, of course, eventually know that Lydia Radar Quayle will be killed by the ricin. If I'm not mistaken, she's the only person who dies from ricin over the course of Breaking Bad. But, yeah, just great scene here through and through. But then basically saying we then need to figure out a delivery device and no more Tuco. Yeah, Kate Valentine, hilarious scene for sure. But yeah, again, really showing to us how, a sort of more, I hate to say this, but again, this sounds really sort of conceited and jaded, but a sort of less intelligent criminal to Walter White would take the sort of very brute, sort of unintelligent, emotional route of, like Jesse Pinkman was saying, let's ambush him and shoot him. But of course, Walter White being ostensibly a genius here with these unbelievable scientific capabilities is really telling himself, if we want to get out of this situation the cleanest way possible, this is how we do it, by this covert, clandestine sort of, spying, KGB spying level sort of plan here in order to kill Tuco and make it look like we had nothing to do with it whatsoever. So yeah, great scene here through and through. At Sam Fisher, what do you think? Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Really appreciate the support, man. Thank you so much for all of the support that you've given to this channel. What do you think was the point when Walt killed for gain rather than self-defense, protecting Jesse from the dealers, ordering hit on Gale? That's a great question. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's pretty nebulous, and again, there's a lot of gray matter there in respect to all of the killing. I mean, you can definitely sort of justify when are you sort of saying, like, when are you sort of alluding to the question of when did Walt start killing, when you can't really argue that it's self-defense? Is that sort of what you're alluding to at Sam Fisher? Because, of course, Emilio and Crazy 8, you can definitely argue self-defense there for sure. Because, Walt was effectively going to be killed by them. Tuco, you can sort of argue self-defense as well. Even the rival dealers, I mean, he was doing it to protect Jesse, I suppose. That's a sort of quasi self-defense, if you will. A sort of self-preservation of him and his business partner. I guess Gail Bedecker, I would say that's really the sort of most gray area level sort of murder, where yes, you can justify it that, my, drug kingpin boss, Gus Fring, was going to probably replace us with this man. So I guess you can sort of argue that self-defense, if you will. I don't know. I would say probably, I don't even know. I mean, again, it's very nebulous, if you will. It's really sort of nebulous. You can even sort of, I don't even know. You can sort of even have this sort of back and forth with a Crazy 8, if you will. But yeah, I would probably say Gale. I mean, that one still is the most sort of and completely sort of gray area level murder for sure. Because, was Gale innocent in air quotes? I wouldn't say he's innocent. Again, I really see Gail Bedecker as the exact same as Jesse Pinkman. So different, yet so similar. I've talked about that so many times in the past, where they made decisions to get in the game. Both of them were very naive to what that actually meant. At Sam Fisher, they were really sort of unaware of all the unintended consequences. We can chalk that up, best case scenario, to ignorance. But yeah, I'd say that the death, again, a lot of it is sort of gray. I mean, you could maybe argue that none of them was truly in self-defense. I mean, I've joked about this in the past at Sam Fisher. Like, if Jesse Pinkman, if and when he gets arrested in Alaska and has to sort of, again, there's no actual physical evidence, but theoretically, if he ever got arrested for the sort of first-degree cold-blooded murder of Gail Bedecker, I don't know if himself representing himself or his defense attorney, I don't know if it would fly in court where he says, Your Honor, my client was worried that his methamphetamine kingpin distributing boss was going to kill him and replace him with this man, so in order to save himself, he killed this man. I don't know if that qualifies as self-defense. Definitely not in the terms of legality, if you will. That definitely seems like first-degree, premeditated murder. I mean, even this. I mean, my goodness, I'm no lawyer. I mean, self-defense laws are incredibly sort of, nuanced, and I think they definitely vary from state to state. I know the sort of Kenosha, Wisconsin case that happened. In the news, was it this year or 2021, 2022? I think it happened in 2020. The last 2 years, that was a sort of very publicized self-defense case that was in the media. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are you sort of talking about moral sort of self-defense as opposed to like ethical sort of self-defense versus legal self-defense? Because legally, I don't know if any of them qualify for self-defense. But again, it sort of goes back to the sort of grand premise here of the sort of, ambiguity of morality that is Breaking Bad at Sam Fisher. So again, I don't know if there's an exact answer to such a sort of philosophical question, if you will. But yeah, it's definitely something interesting to ruminate on. And thank you again so much for the super chat, man. Really appreciate the support. Yeah, great. The killing of Gail Bedecker was a true gray matter. No pun intended at Sam Fisher. Yeah, at Sam Fisher, the prison killings for sure. That one was definitely cold-blooded where, really the only fear that Walter White had was going to prison there where they would rat on him. And that would sort of, I don't know if you definitely couldn't argue his life was in jeopardy there. But yeah, again, it would be hard to argue too about whether or not, well, I mean, it was clear that his life was in jeopardy. I mean, Mike was going to kill him during the season 3 finale, half a full measure. So yeah, it's so nuanced. I feel like I could spend hours and hours on that at Sam Fisher. But yeah, the prison killings were definitely sort of self-preservation more than self-defense. So yeah, Mike won through and through. That was just his sort of ego sort of getting in the way at Sam Fisher. I would agree for sure. That was his sort of ego and feeling slighted by what Mike said to him. Definitely getting ahead of ourselves here from season 5 of Breaking Bad. But yeah, a lot of interesting food for thought. And it's definitely something I've ruminated on for quite a while at Sam Fisher. So at Taco Truck Engineer, what is up? I'm happy you're tuning in, man. Thank you so much for tuning in. I don't know if he makes Tuco seem like an angel at the Pattern Slice 9900, but I see what you're getting at there for sure. I definitely see what you're alluding to. At Sean Crowley, every time Walt killed it was to ultimately protect himself. He never killed just for the sake of killing. I mean, in a way, even the prison killings, it was to protect himself from prison, if you will. Definitely. Again, I don't know. That's definitely not self-defense. I mean, killing a witness so you don't go to prison is definitely not self-defense. That's first-degree murder. In our legal system. So again, it all sort of goes to the sort of, I feel like there's sort of different sets of morality in the Albuquerque criminal underworld as opposed to the U.S. legal system at Sean Crowley. So a lot of food for thought there, but yeah, it's Stone Yoda. That's a whole nother thing, man. Again, Gale is one of my favorite characters in Breaking Bad. I think one of the most underrated characters. I've made a lot of videos on him in the past, and I'll look very much forward to talking about him. When he shows up next season in season 3 of Breaking Bad. So out of the Pattern Slice 9900, I don't think Jesse's getting arrested even in real life. There's not a lot of people. Again, that's a whole nother thing. I was kind of being a little bit facetious there, but I do have some thoughts about Jesse in Alaska. I really do. That's a discussion for a different video, but I've actually been thinking about sort of, what's next for Jesse in Alaska. I mean, he's still a young man. I mean, he's what, like 30 years old probably when he's in Alaska. I mean, he's a very young man. I mean, his life really hasn't even started yet when you're 30 years old. So there's so much more of Jesse Pinkman's life. And it is kind of crazy. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that Saul was in basically, he wasn't even in Omaha for 6 months by the time that he was discovered. So, and again, I know that it's quite a difference that Saul was basically a minor celebrity in Albuquerque and Jesse wasn't. But again, I could go off on a whole tangent there. That is the discussion for a different video, But yeah, getting back into the sort of very last sort of bit of the episode here. A great scene here with Skyler sort of going over old photos. We actually get the very first shot ever of Ted Beneke, who will appear in this season when Skyler eventually goes back to work. It's gonna be hard to find that shot here. Where is this shot? There we go. But yeah, we get the first shot here of Ted Beneke and Skyler, a sort of old photo that she's looking through. Definitely foreshadowing where the sort of story of Skyler is going to go over the course of this season. And of course, following this, another great scene here with Hank Schrader showing up unannounced at Skyler's house. At Sam Fisher, yeah. Again, it's an interesting subject matter. Again, like I said, I could literally talk about this show forever. There's so many sort of little tangents that could be analyzed again and again and again. So yeah, I mean, I could talk about it forever. So, but yeah, getting back into the scene here. Great scene here where Hank shows up unannounced at Skyler's house, kind of trying to sort of hash things out and try to sort of fix what's happening between Skyler and Marie, obviously knowing that something is going on here, that they're not talking to one another. Just please sort of return her phone calls. Skyler basically saying, no, I'm not going to do that. basically saying that Marie is a shoplifter, and when I confronted her about it, she refused to even mention it to me. Hank sort of realizing, oh, so you know too, we're trying to get under control, and Skylar's realizing, wait, what, you knew about the shoplifting and you didn't say anything, and basically saying like, she's working on it, she's in therapy, she's trying to, fix all of this. Skylar even saying, did she send you over here? He said, hell no. She's not even talking to me. I'm trying to fix this. What's happening between you and your sister? Just return her phone calls. My life is a living hell at home. I need to get involved in this situation like I need another hole in my ass. Classic Hank Schrader dialogue here through and through. Kind of saying, I know you're upset with her, but she has this mental issue. We need to support her. We need to support the shit out of her. And of course, this comment here by Hank Schrader, really sets Skylar off, where she's saying, oh, Marie is the one who needs support, not the sort of pregnant woman, who is, in financial, is in financial straits right now. Her husband is like diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and just leaves her and sort of doesn't say where he's going. They have no money to speak of. Their water heater is on the fritz. Everything is going crazy. Basically saying, I'm gonna give birth soon. My husband is gonna be dead. We're poor. Our house is falling apart, but oh, Marie needs help, not me, my bitch sister, to quote Skylar, she's the one with the important problems, really sort of blowing up here. I mean, unbelievable scene when she really affronts Hank Schrader here, the sort of, pregnant Skylar getting mad at a Hank. I mean, just unbelievable sort of scene here where Hank is just realizing, oh my God, what did I do here? Understanding that Skylar is also probably very hormonal here as a result of her being very pregnant. Hank basically just knowing he has to sit here and take it. Like, he's not going to, argue with Skylar right now based on the circumstances. She's making a lot of good points. Of course, we then see Skylar having this blow up and then finally break down in tears. And yes, as Sam Fisher said, that awkward hug is absolutely hilarious when, Hank is hugging her from quite a distance, not really fully embracing her. Likely just as a result of the sort of microcosm of Hank Schrader's personality. Of course, he then says, want me to take a look at that water closet, in a very sort of, classic sort of, masculine trope where, yes, I'm not the person to talk with your feelings about, but, I can help you with your water closet if you want, with that leaky water heater. Very sort of a great piece of dialogue here, a very just sort of unbelievably well written scene. This was, again, I love this scene. I love the sort of worlds sort of colliding here for the audience, even though Hank Schrader doesn't know just how immersed his entire family is in his life as a result of him not knowing Walter Heisenberg. But yeah, great scene here through and through. Again, it's such a powerful, emotional scene, but so much comedy is interjected into it as well. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I love this show. It's just unbelievable. There is Rot. Yeah, again, getting ahead of ourselves here for sure. The episode entitled Down, if I'm not mistaken, that's Sam Fisher. So yeah, definitely we'll get to talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, at Just Dan, what is up as well? Thank you so much for tuning in, man. I really appreciate it. But yeah, following this, again, the grand irony is that, Skylar talking about, I don't know where my husband is, and where he is he's with his former student in the basement of his home, manufacturing manufacturing ricin and putting it in a new bag of methamphetamine as sort of a delivery system in order to kill this man who is threatening their lives the way they're interpreting it of Tuco Salamanca. As Sam Fisher, were you alluding to something else? I was alluding to when he was saying that the floorboard was rotting. It's like, Skylar, there's rot. When, he just got the positive cancer diagnosis and he was, working in the crawl space fixing all of the wood. That's what sort of I was sort of alluding to. So, yeah, definitely pretty awkward for Hank at Justin Cruz for sure. But yeah, great scene here where they manufacture the ricin. Can't do it justice, of course. I can't play it, but yeah, I love the sort of montage nature of it. I love the even music that's intertwined in it. But yeah, definitely recommend you go back and rewatch it for the 40th time if you haven't already done so. But yeah, following this at Virgil, hey everyone, how's it going, Anton? I'm doing great. I hope you're doing well as yourself. Thank you so much for tuning in at Virgil. Um, all right, that's it, Fisher. All right, I got you. But yeah, so following this, Jesse basically saying, now what? Walt then saying, all right, so our next meeting, we get him to take this, we say, and Jesse basically sort of giving him the business in the same way that Walt was giving him the business, kind of saying, how do we do that? He says, all right, we're testing this new formula. How about you try it? What do you think of it? And then Jesse saying, well, what's new about it? Of course, Walt's saying, well, who cares? It gets the person insanely high. The degenerate will snort, whatever he gets his hands on. And of course, Jesse's saying, all right, we'll put a pin in that as well. Sort of a callback to what Walt said to him earlier in this episode. And then, basically saying after a couple of days, day or two, it will look like the flu or a heart attack and he'll pass away. And no more Tuco. His associates won't expect anything, and that will be the end of it. All's well that ends well. That's sort of the plan that we're working with right now. Of course, Jesse's saying, unless Tuco kills us first. And of course, this is then interrupted by Walt getting a phone call. Of course, a very pertinent and important piece of foreshadowing here where he pulls out one cell phone that's ringing, realizes that's not the one that's ringing, and then puts it away and picks up the other cell phone, his personal cell phone, as opposed to the drug cell phone that he picks up first. Of course, a huge piece of foreshadowing for where this season will go. The cell phones being a crucial component to this storyline that will even affect the season finale of this episode when Skylar finally puts the puzzle pieces together that Walt has been lying to her this entire time. We then see that Walt gets a phone call from Hank. Basically saying, apologizing for trying to fix things over with Skylar and Marie, and you're probably going to get an earful when you get back home. Of course, Walt kind of, being so preoccupied with Tuco right now, this sort of little inconvenience is not really on his mind, and he truly doesn't care about this. This is sort of the last thing he's worried about. And kind of says, Hank, don't worry about it. These things happen, and despite the fact that he's trying to be dismissive towards Hank, I think he truly. Or not dismissive, is just trying to, get this conversation over with so he can get back to what he's doing. At the end of the day, it's, in the sort of grand sort of scheme of things, the sort of trivial back and forth between the sort of, family members is not the most important thing in the world. And of course, they're more occupied with, Tuco trying to kill them. Of course, the grand irony here is that Hank Schrader is at the sort of crime scene where No-Dose was killed, unbeknownst to Walt and Jesse. And of course, it's then revealed to us that Gonzo is dead along with No-Dose. Hank, sort of in very Hank Schrader fashion, takes a picture of this and sort of finds this very comical and funny and wants to pass this along to his brother-in-law, kind of saying like, hey, we may be having a bad day, but not as bad as these guys. And of course, the grand irony is that Walter White is actually caught up in the world with these two characters. But of course, unbeknownst to the audience at the time as well as Jesse and Walt, they know that Gonzo was dead, but they don't know why No-Dose is dead, because the last time that they saw him, he was still alive. Of course, they realize, they're flabbergasted here. They're just literally stunned. This, of course, ends Act 3, and we then pick up with Act 4, the final act of this episode, where we then see Walt basically saying, I'm taking your gun. Jesse saying, no, I need it. Not if you leave town, leave right now. Of course, Walt telling him Tuco killing Gonzo means he's coming after us next. They're not sure why he killed Gonzo, but if he's going to kill Gonzo as a loose end, he's definitely killing us as well. That's sort of the sort of thought process that Walt and Jesse are going through right now. Of course, following this, Walt goes back home. Jesse then grabs his rainy day fund, about $67K and change, to skip town with. Of course, unbeknownst to us, a great shot here when he opens the bag here with his drug money of about $70,000. He then leaves his house. Of course, unbeknownst to us, I guess Tuco was waiting right outside. Spoiler alert here. But really sort of setting the story forward in motion here for sure. We then see Walter White return home with gun in hand. Wondering if Tuco was already at his house, potentially, because he thinks, despite the fact that it may have just been his paranoia, that Tuco's black caddy was outside of his house. But yeah, following this, we then see it revealed to us that no one else is home besides Skylar. Skylar is just, relaxing and, taking a bath, revealing to him that Walter Jr. is not there. He's at Lewis's house. Basically, following this, Walt then abruptly leaves very quickly, much to the chagrin of Skylar, wondering what is going on. Walt, of course, is in tunnel vision right now, trying to make sort of, grand plans here to, again, I'm not even really sure what he's thinking about right now. Maybe some sort of, thought about fleeing or something to that effect, but he takes out all the drug money that he keeps in his sort of, air duct right here that's taped down because he doesn't want it to blow away. He, of course, takes it out and puts it in the box of diapers along with the gun. Another piece of foreshadowing for this story later in this episode when he, of course, has to come back from the hospital, not wanting to jump ahead of myself here, but, yeah, that's Sam Fisher. That's a great piece of dialogue in the next episode where, he says, like, you boost my gun and then you lose it. You like that pretty funny piece of dialogue there for sure. But of course, following this, we then cut back to Hank Schrader at the crime scene, where it's then revealed to us that as a result of Gonzo being there, Tuco didn't kill Gonzo at the end of the day. Gonzo went back, probably against the wishes of Tuco, to move his, colleague and friend's body, Nodo's, because he wanted to give him a proper Christian burial, just based on the dialogue if we read into that. And of course, Hank Schrader then deduces that he wasn't killed. Nodo's was here, but at first, this guy came, and then the sort of the car shifted, and his arm got pinned, and he bled out, trying to move his friend's body, and that's how he died. Of course, this, being a very crucial piece of dialogue here, because we as the audience know that Tuco didn't kill Gonzo, but Walt and Jesse do not know, and they are also, this information is revealed to them in the next episode, and is very crucial as a result of, their various decision-making, as a result of them being kidnapped by Tuco at the very end of this episode. But yeah, very Hank Schrader sort of fashion here, this scene of him getting, this photo here with Gonzo and his severed arm. We even get a shot of this all the way down the road in the episode entitled Blood Money, when he's going through the evidence, when he's trying to get the smoking gun that ties his brother-in-law to being Heisenberg. But yeah, of course, then following this, we then cut back to Walt and Skylar back in their home. Skylar basically saying, "Can you please talk to me? You've been so distant. You've been, coming home at crazy hours. You don't tell me where you are." Walt, of course, saying, "I don't even know where to begin." And again, it's like before he can eat, it's kind of crazy. I remember I went back and rewatched the scene. He's trying to sort of muster up the words here and trying to figure out what to say. But of course, before he can even get a word in edgewise, his second cell phone rings. He, of course, then looks at it and puts it away. Skylar, of course, notices this, a crucial piece of sort of a crucial component of the story that will play into effect over the remainder of the season. Then following this, Walt then sees that there's a car outside of his home. He sees that Jesse is sitting in said car, goes out kind of saying, "What the heck are you doing here?" We see this incredibly petrified look on Jesse Pinkman's face. It's then revealed to us that Tuco Salamanca was likely waiting outside of Jesse's home. He had, effectively kidnapped Jesse and was holding him at gunpoint. He then tells Walt to get in the car. He has no choice in the matter. He, is going in the car as is, leaving his pregnant wife unceremoniously in the bathtub. The story not adding up, as she will say to Detective Tim Roberts in the next episode, where, we're talking, he gets a phone call, he goes out and just leaves. And Walt sort of ends up in the car here, and, Tuco says drive, and they drive off into the night, thus ending the season 2 premiere of Breaking Bad. And yeah, it was pretty crazy. As I was rewatching this for the 100th time, I was thinking about, man, I can only imagine what a sort of season 2 premiere this must have been. And major shout out to all the OGs out there who were watching this on TV. And my goodness, what a cliffhanger. What an unbelievable cliffhanger, where if you were an OG and you watched the entire first season of Breaking Bad and you were like, all right, I'm going to watch the season 2 premiere on TV. Can't wait to see what happens. My goodness, look at this predicament that Walt and Jesse are in with Tuco. How are they going to get out of this one? What a cliffhanger for season 1. I can't believe I have to wait an entire week to see what happens, unlike all the people like myself in the future who will just watch the second episode immediately on Netflix. And I'll, They instead get to ruminate on it for a week. But yeah, thus ending this season 2 episode 1 premiere of Breaking Bad. So yeah, unbelievable episode through and through. One of my favorites. As I talked about a little bit earlier, hard to watch. The cold opening scene outside of the sort of lens and prism of Better Call Saul with the sort of black and white mantra with the color interjected of the pink teddy bear, as well as the lit cigarette with Gene and no Gene with James Morgan McGill and Kim Wexler smoking in prison. But yeah, quite the episode here. And again, I know I talked about how season 1 was my favorite, one of my favorite seasons. I love season 2 as well. I mean, it just has such a special place for me. I love the scenes of Jesse living in that apartment attached to Jane. I mean, there's just so many great scenes there. That apartment only appears in season 2 of Breaking Bad. It's an unbelievable sort of season. There's so many great scenes that take place over the course of this season. Great montage scenes, great stories, so much character development. We get the emergence of unbelievable characters like Mike Ehrmantraut and Gus Fring, and of course, the notorious Saul Goodman. So many great, important, crucial characters come into the fold. Excuse me. It's such a setup season that will truly set up the trajectory of the remainder of Breaking Bad in the final 3 seasons. And yeah, I love this. Again, this one has a special place. This one has a special place in my heart, if you will. In addition to season 1, but at Stone Yoda, season 2 is awesome, man. Things were still somewhat light, fun to watch. Yeah, definitely still lighter for sure. Much lighter, but still a lot of darkness. Combo gets killed this season. That's a pretty big one for sure. Even the death of Tuco. A lot of heavy scenes with Jesse and the sort of falling out of his family. When he's kicked out of his own home, we really see the sort of, even though, I mean, it's kind of crazy. With the benefit of hindsight, you really think, oh my God, Jesse hits rock bottom in season 2. But seriously, like, him falling into that porta potty after getting kicked out of his house, that's not even rock middle for Jesse Pinkman in the grand scheme of things. That's nothing. That's not even rock high. That is nothing compared to the sort of true rock bottom that Jesse will experience over the course of season 5 of Breaking Bad. So yeah, just a much more lighthearted for sure. I really feel like, to me, the death of Gale was such a sort of light switch moment where things just really sort of just went to a next level. That was truly the first sort of real, much more ambiguous death of Gale Boetticher there. That one really sort of turned the thermostat up a lot of the show. And I mean, to then immediately follow that with the death of Victor, that was something right there. I mean, it's not quite the same. It kind of reminds me a little bit, actually, of like how Better Call Saul in back-to-back episodes, we had the death of Howard Hamlin followed by the death of Lalo Salamanca. I mean, the death of Gale and the death of Victor, it's not quite the same with the benefit of hindsight, but it was still very powerful in respect to how those deaths affected all the various main characters. So, yeah, this is such a great show. I love talking about it, but yeah, that's Sam Fisher. If Walter White wasn't there, he may have done that sort of very emotionally idiotic plan. I agree. At Stone Yoda, Hank is cool with taking pictures with a severed arm, but when he sees a severed head, it's PTSD. JK, LOL. I feel like it's a little bit different. I feel like, I'm not gonna speak for Hank Schrader's sort of nuance there, but I see what you're doing there for sure. At Stone Yoda, that's an interesting point you raised for sure. And yes, those again, I think about that so much. I think about, had I watched Breaking Bad on television, the first 4 seasons, I sometimes think about some of those cliffhangers and how some of them would have been like, oh my goodness, sitting on these for a week would have been brutal. I mean, which ones come to mind? Of course, the crawl space cliffhanger, the half measures cliffhanger. The after he kills the rival dealers, the cliffhanger when the scene with the sort of the camera panning up from the crawl space after the hit is put out on Hank. I mean, my God, there were so many cliffhangers that were so brutal. I mean, yeah, just unbelievable. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's Sam Fisher. Yeah, like I said, the death of Gale, for sure. At Kate Valentine, appreciate the kind words, and again, appreciate all the support for the that you've given to this channel for sure. Thank you so much. Big fan of the sunglasses emoji. Yeah, it's Stone Yoda. Again, the relationship continues to get darker and darker too as the seasons progress as well. Absolutely. Yeah, it's Sam Fisher. Howard's death, next level for sure. But yeah, box cutter. That was again. Talk about getting right into it, man. I mean, after just like imagine just. I mean, yeah. I mean, I had to actually. I think I waited at least a couple, maybe a day and a half. I've told this story before because when I first started watching Breaking Bad, only the first three seasons were on Netflix, and I didn't have a credit card, so I literally had I went out to Walmart like it was almost it wasn't even 2 days. I literally went out to Walmart, bought an iTunes gift card with cash, and then bought season 4 and watched it immediately. So that was a little bit of a cliffhanger for me. The full measure to box cutter, but yeah, box cutter. That one was brutal too. And again, I could only imagine what sitting on that for a week would have been as well. Following just Walt, just realizing always just sitting on Walter White's predicament there following the death of Gale and finding himself in that sort of Kafkaesque situation. Yeah, Sean Crowley, that would have been pretty brutal. But yeah, he never got to work with Gale, but he definitely met Gale. Justin Cruz, that is an understatement. But yeah, it's Sam Fisher. That was a tough scene, and I guess I'll get to talk about that eventually when I talk about that episode. But yeah, tough scene in so many respects. That Sam Fisher. Yeah, what's the matter, Schrader? You act like you've never seen a severed head on a tortoise before. Great call. Negro y Azul, if I'm not mistaken, as Sean Crowley. Of course, the grand irony is that that DEA agent would lose a leg following the head being ripped off the tortoise, and that one federale would lose his life. So, yeah. Oh, right, for sure. My goodness, how can I forget? The 1 minute cliffhanger when Hank Schrader got shot. That when the sort of the scenes in the parking lot there, when you sort of have Marco's dead body, Hank bleeding out, Lionel bleeding out, the sort of innocent bystander dead in the parking lot. That one would have been tough as well. So a lot of cliffhangers, for sure. Crawl space. Yeah, crawl space really stands out to me. I can only imagine just sitting on that one for a week at Justin Cruz. So that's Stone Yoda. This is the one show I'm glad I got to watch most of it on Netflix. LOL. I like watching live, but the show was like crack when I need it. But yeah, again, the same for me. I mean, like I said, I couldn't, there's no way I was thinking, so when is season 4 going to be on Netflix of Breaking Bad? I was like, yeah, I can't wait that long. I have to go watch it right now. Great scene there. Why are you here? Why are you blue? Yeah, great scene. For sure, getting ahead of ourselves in season 2. So, muy fácil indeed. He had him. He absolutely had him. But the over dramatization of the cartel sort of was Marco's downfall. I even think who is that actor? I think it's Luis Moncada played Marco. He definitely I saw him post on Instagram that scene, and he captioned it. I had him. I had him. If it wasn't, the grandstanding and the monologuing is usually the downfall of the criminal. It's the tried and true trope that's often displayed to us in film and television. So, and yeah, even thinking back to season 5 of Breaking Bad, though, I mean, the biggest one for me was probably Granite State. That was a tough one. I mean, the Granite State ending and Ozymandias, those two cliffhangers, my goodness, those were crazy. I mean, when Walt is just the shots ringing out in the car and he's trying to duck down in the truck, and of course the Ozymandias cliffhanger when he goes off with Ed disappear and the dog walks across the road. Just reveling for those 2 weeks with those cliffhangers was brutal, man. Absolutely brutal. At Dread Electric, appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Not the again. I like that. I like that icon. Yoda, right from Star Wars. No, I'm pretty sure that's Yoda, right? I can't. I'm 99% sure, but yeah, I'm not too well versed. Of course, and at Stone Yoda, there we go, man. Stone Yoda and Dread Electric, kind of the similar theme there, but yeah, that was yeah. In hindsight, I think I screamed at my TV as well at Stone Yoda. I think I screamed at my TV as well. I even remember Vince Gilligan talking about it leading into that episode. Like, this was gonna be the episode with the cliffhanger that literally with fans were almost going to be like, like visibly sort of you know angered at, almost not in angered isn't the right word, but just literally sort of just emotionally sort of exhibiting sort of a sort of tribal primal sort of reaction to that sort of cliffhanger. And that one was brutal. I mean, literally mid frame, just cutting to black so unceremoniously there with Walt screaming in the car, with him just, ducking down with that just barrage of, bullet fire. That was something there. That Tahaj cliffhanger was something. That one was something. Oh, did Dead Freight too at Justin Cruz. I remember Dead Freight. Yep, I remember reveling in that one for a week. That one was tough too. Almost forgot about that one. That was a great episode. And yeah, again, I was even gonna mention this a little bit, but yeah, the very intricate planning that Walt wanted to go through us in order to kill Tuco Salamanca, the step by step process, it really kind of reminded me of what they probably did when they were planning that train heist, just going over it again and again and again and again, practicing again and again, and planning for every contingency. But of course, as von Clausewitz said, war on the battlefield is not the same as war on the sort of on the map in the sort of war room on the table. There's friction in the battlefield, and of course they could have never planned for the sort of friction contingency of Drew Sharp riding by on his motorcycle. So unbelievable cliffhanger. Yeah, it's Sam Fisher, the season five of Better Call Saul cliffhanger. Why is that slipping my mind? Oh, of course, with Lala Salamanca. Right. Yeah, of course. Uh, something unforgivable. Yeah. No, something unforgivable. Is that the, am I blanking on the title here? But the episode where Tuco walks off into the distance after Nacho helps Gus raid his compound. Yeah. So yeah, yep, that one definitely that was quite a couple of years that we had to wait for that one. So ooh, but yeah, I mean, just unbelievable episode through and through here. Uh, really enjoyed talking about this one this evening, and yeah, so like I said, with that, I'll pretty much probably wrap it up here. But yeah, really appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. Thank you so much at Kate Valentine and Sam Fisher for the super chats. Really appreciate the support, and also really appreciate everyone for tuning in and watching tonight. Like I said, I'll try to do these a little more regularly if I can in December. I mean, there seems to be, people enjoy watching them. There seems to be some demand for them, and I really love doing them. Again, I really love, rewatching the show and, checking it out and talking about it after not seeing it for quite a while. Again, it's actually been quite a while since I've seen the season one premiere, and it literally has been since I haven't seen it, like I talked about a little bit earlier, since the sort of conclusion of Better Call Saul. So the sort of entire viewing of it through the lens of the black and white as it relates to the Better Call Saul Gene Tagovic timeline was something for sure. But yeah, thank you everyone so much for tuning in tonight. Like I said, I'll try to post these more regularly if I can. Even again, I'm even trying to figure out how to use the the planning of the live stream, the setting of the dates and everything. I'm kind of I didn't even really know about that feature. I need to start using that in the future. But yeah, like I said, thank you everyone so much for tuning in tonight. Thank you so much for all the support that you've given to this channel. Really enjoy talking about this show and can't wait to talk about the next one. Have a great rest of your evening, and I'll see you guys around. Take it easy.